You're told that having many friends means you're socially successful and emotionally fulfilled. What if I told you hundreds of friendships actually make you lonelier than having none? This sounds impossible because we believe social connection quantity equals happiness and support. But there's something that doesn't quite add up. Why do people with the largest social networks report feeling most isolated? The friendship dilution trap works by spreading emotional energy across so many people that none receive enough for real connection. You maintain hundreds of shallow relationships while having 0 deep ones. Think about your last actual crisis. How many of your many friends actually showed up? The system creates 2 completely different relationships with social connection depending on network size. For people with few friends, each relationship receives full attention and develops real depth. They know who will answer the phone at 3 a.m. For people with many friends, each relationship receives fractional attention and stays perpetually surface level. They have nobody to call at 3 a.m. despite knowing hundreds of people. This explains something curious about how loneliness manifests in crowded social networks. Subscribe to Prof. Jiang. Explained if you want to see how relationship quantity affects quality. Share this with someone who has 500 connections but nobody to talk to. Small networks build through shared struggle and mutual vulnerability. Large networks build through accumulated superficial interactions. Same word friendship, completely different psychological reality and support capacity. Consider how each group handles personal problems. The person with few friends calls one of them and has a real conversation. They share the full complexity of what's happening. The friend listens deeply and provides genuine support. The person with many friends posts vaguely on social media, hoping someone will reach out. They get 20 shallow responses, but no actual conversation. One person receives real support. The other person receives performative concern. The support asymmetry creates what psychologists might call the crowded loneliness paradox. You can be surrounded by people and feel completely alone. The crowd makes loneliness worse because you should feel connected but don't. The isolation feels like personal failure rather than structural problem. People with few friends expect occasional loneliness. People with many friends feel broken when lonely despite constant social activity. But here's where the strategy becomes more sophisticated. Large networks don't just prevent depth. They actually require maintaining a performance that prevents vulnerability. With few friends, you can be messy, confused, or struggling. With many friends, you must maintain a consistent public persona. Vulnerability would damage your social brand across hundreds of relationships simultaneously. Do you present a more polished version of yourself to acquaintances than close friends? The presentation variance reveals the trap. Deep friendships allow you to be yourself completely. Shallow friendships require carefully managed presentation. When all your friendships are shallow, you're performing constantly. Nobody sees the real you. This creates profound isolation despite constant social interaction. The system also exploits what researchers call the reciprocity impossibility. Real friendship requires reciprocal investment. You support them, they support you. This works with 5 people. It becomes impossible with 500 people. You cannot reciprocally invest in hundreds of relationships. The math doesn't work. So relationships become transactional rather than reciprocal. You perform friendship rather than practice it. Consider how different network sizes handle life changes. The person with few friends tells each one directly about major changes. They have real conversations processing what's happening. The large network person announces changes publicly to hundreds of people. They receive many reactions but no actual conversations. One person processes change through relationship, the other person broadcasts change through announcement. The broadcast mentality means large networks turn friendship into audience management. You're not connecting with individuals. You're performing for a crowd. The crowd responds but doesn't actually know you. They react to your presentation, not your reality. This creates the strange sensation of being seen by many people while being known by none. But there's something even more insidious about how large networks prevent crisis support. Real support requires people who know your full context. They understand your history, patterns, and actual situation. Shallow friends only know your public presentation. When crisis hits, they can't actually help because they don't know enough. Their support is generic because they're responding to limited information. The context deficit means large networks fail exactly when you need them most. During actual crisis, you discover that hundreds of acquaintances equals 0 real friends. Nobody knows enough about you to provide meaningful help. Nobody is invested enough to show up when it's difficult. You're surrounded by people who would like your crisis post, but not one who would drive you to the hospital. Have you ever felt lonelier at a party full of friends than sitting alone? The social loneliness reveals the trap. Shallow interaction makes you aware of connection's absence. Being alone feels normal. Being surrounded by shallow connections while craving depth feels tragic. The party reminds you that these people aren't actually your friends despite the label. The system maintains itself through what sociologists call the network maintenance treadmill. Large networks require constant effort to maintain. You must stay visible, respond to everyone, and keep up with hundreds of lives. This effort prevents developing depth anywhere. The maintenance becomes the relationship. You're not building friendships, you're managing a social media presence. But perhaps the most sophisticated aspect involves how large networks change what friendship means psychologically. With few friends, friendship means mutual vulnerability and support. With many friends, friendship means social validation and status. One type measures friendship by depth, the other type measures friendship by count. These are fundamentally different psychological relationships using the same word. There's also a temporal dimension where large networks destroy relationship memory. With few friends, you remember shared experiences and inside jokes. Your history together creates depth. With many friends, you can't remember how you met most of them. There's no shared history creating bond. The relationships stay frozen at superficial introduction level forever. Consider how different network sizes experience social events. The person with few friends goes to events with those friends. The event strengthens existing bonds through shared experience. The person with many friends goes to events to maintain network visibility. The event is work rather than enjoyment. One person deepens existing friendships. The other person maintains shallow connections that require constant upkeep. The maintenance burden means large networks become obligation rather than joy. You attend events because you should be seen there. You respond to messages because the algorithm requires engagement. You post updates because maintaining presence requires visibility. None of this is actual friendship. It's network management disguised as social connection. But there's another layer that makes large networks particularly destructive. They prevent the vulnerability that creates real intimacy. Intimacy requires risk. You share something real and see if the other person accepts you. With few friends, you can take this risk. With many friends, sharing real vulnerability reaches hundreds of people. The exposure feels too dangerous. So you stay surface level and lonely. The vulnerability avoidance means large networks keep you isolated by your own protection mechanisms. You can't be real because too many people are watching. You must maintain the performance. The performance prevents connection. The lack of connection makes you lonely. The loneliness makes you seek more connections. The cycle reinforces itself. This creates what relationship researchers call the intimacy paradox. The more people you know, the fewer you can actually be intimate with. Intimacy requires time, vulnerability, and reciprocal investment. These are finite resources. You can invest them in 3 people or spread them across 300. Spreading them makes every relationship equally shallow. Nobody receives enough to create real bond. The resource scarcity also explains why large networks correlate with higher anxiety and depression. You're constantly aware of hundreds of relationships you're failing to maintain properly. Every unanswered message is guilt. Every missed event is social debt. Every person you haven't contacted recently is relationship erosion. The maintenance anxiety becomes constant background stress that small networks don't experience. There's also a comparison dimension where large networks amplify social comparison. With few friends, you compare yourself to actual peers you know deeply. With many friends, you compare yourself to curated presentations from hundreds of people. You see everyone's highlight reel and nobody's struggle. This makes your own life seem inadequate despite being normal. Do you feel worse about yourself after scrolling through your social network? The comparison effect reveals how large networks destroy self-esteem. Small networks provide realistic comparison points. Large networks provide impossible standards. Everyone seems happier, more successful, and more connected than you. The comparison creates inadequacy that drives more social seeking. The seeking creates larger networks. The larger networks amplify comparison. The cycle continues. Can you think of anyone who became less lonely by adding more friends? The loneliness pattern reveals the strategy's failure. Every person who escaped loneliness did so by deepening few relationships, not expanding many. They reduced their network and invested in depth. Meanwhile, people who expanded networks seeking connection found themselves more isolated despite increasing social activity. There's also what we might call the birthday test that reveals network shallowness. Small networks remember your birthday because they actually know you. Large networks only remember because Facebook reminds them. The birthday messages from hundreds of people feel empty because you know their automated responses. 3 genuine messages from close friends mean more than 300 automated ones. The automation of care extends beyond birthdays to all relationship maintenance. Large networks require automated responses to survive. You can't personally craft responses to hundreds of people, so interactions become templated. Everyone receives the same generic warmth. This makes all interaction feel meaningless. Small networks allow personalized interaction. Each person receives communication tailored to them. This creates genuine feeling of being seen. The emotional labor distribution also becomes unsustainable in large networks. You're expected to care about hundreds of people's lives, celebrate their wins, sympathize with their losses, remember their details. This is emotionally impossible, so you fake it. You perform care you don't actually feel. This creates moral injury over time. You're constantly pretending to care more than you do. Small networks allow genuine care for each person. The system perpetuates itself because people with large networks who feel lonely blame themselves for not being social enough. They add more connections trying to fill the void. Those who reduce their networks and find real friendship get dismissed as antisocial when they actually just prioritize depth over breadth. And perhaps most remarkably, the system has convinced people that friendship quantity equals social success, when actually having many shallow connections while lacking deep ones is the loneliest social configuration possible, because you're constantly reminded that connection exists but perpetually denied access to its real form.